Thank you everyone. Welcome to another new classes of human physiology. In the last few classes we have discussed about the blood composition, coagulation pathways or the hemostasis pathway, then different type of anticoagulants we have discussed their mechanism, and finally we have also discussed different type of blood related diseases, blood prototyping and the blood transfusion. From this week, this class will start discussing about the lymph and their function. So, what different contents will be covered in this class? We will cover about what is lymphatic system, what is the function of lymphatic system, then lymphatic circulation, lymphoid cells, lymph node and their structure and function. These all would be covered in this class. Okay. So, what is lymphatic system? Lymphatic system is a closed system of lymph channel or lymph vessels through which the lymph flows. So, lymph is basically like a kind of fluid like blood. Okay. So, let us consider lymph is like a fluid like blood, but for this circulation of the lymph there is a lymphatic circulatory system. For example, in our body blood circulates in a capillary circulation using like the arteries, venas, and who kind of controls the blood circulation? Our heart. Same way for the circulation of lymph we have another network which is called the lymphatic circulation. Okay, and it is mostly a one-way system that allows the lymph to flow from the tissue spaces to the blood. Okay, this is mostly like a one-way exchange system where the lymph can flow from the interstitial tissues or the tissues to the blood. Okay. So, what is the organization of lymphatic system? Lymphatic system arises from the tissue space as a meshwork or the delicate vessels, and these vessels are called as lymph capillary. What is this vessels called? These are called as lymph capillaries. Okay. And lymph capillaries, they start from the tissue space or the interstitial spaces of the tissue as enlarged like blind ended terminal called capillary bulb. Okay. Lymph capillaries are lined by regular like endothelial cell lines. The structure of lymph capillaries is slightly different from that of blood capillary. Even though there are like endothelial cell lines, the structure is little bit of different for those capillary. Okay. Lymph capillaries are more porous in nature and the cells lie overlapping on each other. Okay. So, in cases of blood capillary the endothelial cells are more tight. Okay. So, this is, if you consider this is a blood capillary, the endothelial cells are more tight, but in cases of lymph these are more porous. Okay, because the lymphatic cells like immune cells, WBCs and all the other components together, the size of those are much bigger. So, for the right exchange between the interstitial tissues and the blood, the capillaries need to be more porous in nature compared to the blood capillary. Okay. Functions of lymphatic system. So, what it does is basically drains excess of lymphatic fluid. Right. So, it drains excess of interstitial fluid that kind of is present in our tissue. So, lymphatic vessels drain excess interstitial fluids and that returns to the blood. This is very important because as a whole we have to kind of maintain the water balance in our body. Right. So, if the excess water gets removed out from the body, we can experience the dehydration kind of situation. So, it is important that all the tissue fluids after the function of the cellular respiration, that excess fluid should be returned back to the blood, so that overall our blood and body maintains like a good water balance. Okay. It transports dietary lipids, that is also a very important application. Lymphatic vessels transport lipid and lipid soluble vitamins like A, D, E, K, etc., which are generally absorbed by our gastrointestinal tract. And most important function, the third one, is that lymphatic circulation or lymph, it carries like immune response or immune functions of our body, right. This lymph can carry like WBCs, other like T cells, and they generate highly specific responses related to any microbe or any abnormal cells like tumor cells. So, the immune cell function of the lymph is very important, and it is like so crucial for our body. So, you can see this lymphatic circulation overall is drawn here. It is connected to the pulmonary network or the blood circulation. So, this part, it is the artery and the blood, and the arteries and the veins are connected with each other, creating like a blood capillary network, and through which the blood circulation is happening. And you can see side by side to this blood circulation, we have these lymphatic capillaries with the lymph nodes present, which is creating the lymphatic circulation system. And using these lymphatic capillaries and the blood capillaries, there is a continuous exchanges of fluid from interstitial fluid to the blood. So, basically the fluid which will go to the interstitial to the lymphatic capillary, eventually there would be exchange from this interstitial capillary to the blood capillary, and any excess fluid will basically drained out to the blood. Okay. So, what is lymph? Lymph is formed from the interstitial fluid due to the permeability of the lymph capillaries. So, when blood passes via the blood capillaries in the tissue, 9/10 of almost like 8 or 9th part of the whole fluid passes into the venous end of the capillary from the arterial end. But the remaining 1/10 of that fluid, it gets retained in the lymph capillary. Okay. So, mostly 9/10 part which like kind of passes from arterial to the venous end, but 1/10 of that fluid that gets retained and that passes through the lymph capillary, which will have more permeability than the blood capillary. Okay. And when lymph passes through the lymph capillaries, the composition of the lymph is more or less similar to that of interstitial fluid, including the protein content. Protein present in the interstitial fluid eventually cannot enter the blood capillary because of their larger size. So, any protein that is getting carried by the lymphatic fluids or lymph, it will not be able to enter to the blood, only the water content or the electrolytes will be able to go into the blood, the rest of the protein will be retained. Okay. So, these proteins eventually enter the lymph vessels, right. If you go to the last slide again, you remember there is this lymph node or lymph vessels present. So, any excess protein that is unable to go back to the blood circulation, they will enter the lymphatic vessels, which are permeable to the larger particles. So, basically these lymphatic vessels will capture those protein, and sometime it may degrade those protein back, or it can retain for other function. Okay. So, what are the composition of lymph? You can say lymph is basically a clear and colorless type of fluid, and which is formed with almost 96% of water and only like 4% of solid. And sometimes blood cells are also present in the lymph, including like immune cells, right. And rate of lymph flow, you can see about 120 ml of lymph that flows per hour in our body. Through this about this 120 ml of lymph which flows like within an hour, out of which 100 ml per hour flow through the thoracic duct, and 20 ml per hour of the lymph that flows from our right lymphatic duct. Okay. So, there are two different lymphatic duct. Out of the 120 ml, 100 ml mostly goes through the thoracic duct, and only 20 ml per hour flows through the right lymphatic duct. Okay. And then what are different factors that can release or that can increases the lymphatic flow or the flow of lymph? Interstitial fluid pressure, blood capillary pressure, surface area of the lymph capillary in cases of dilation, high permeability of the lymph capillary, or functional activities of the tissues can increase the flow of lymph, okay, in our body. What are different functions of lymph? The important functions of lymph is to return the protein from the tissue space into the blood, right, and also the return or redistribution of the water. So it is very important that return and redistribution of water back to the blood, it is so important, right. Bacteria, toxin, if anything is presented, the lymph has the immune cells that will destroy it. So any type of bacteria, toxin, foreign bodies or abnormal cells can be removed from the tissues via the lymph. Lymph flow is also responsible for the maintenance of the structural and functional integrity of the tissue. Obstruction of lymph flow affect various tissues and lymphedema or enlargement of the organ can happen. Okay. Lymph flow also serves as an important route for intestinal fat absorption. So intestinal fat absorption can happen through the lymph flow. This is why lymph appears little bit milky in nature after a fatty meal. Okay. It also has very important role in terms of serving the immunity by transport of lymphocyte. So lymphocyte is an immune cell in our body. It also has lot of macrophage cells that will basically phagocytize different type of abnormal like microbes. So by engulfing those microbes or abnormal cells like tumor cells, these macrophage cells and lymphocyte cells, they can destroy any type of foreign particles that are harmful to our body. So most important role of the lymph is maintaining our immunity. Okay, so what are different type of lymphoid cell? As you can see, like mostly lymphoid cell has what? Lymphocytes, right? This is a part of like WBC cells. In the lymphocytes, you can see there are two type of mostly cells like T cells and B cells, right? So lymphocytes has two different category, T cells and B cells. And what is mostly their function? T cell manage immune response, they destroy foreign cells. For B cells, it produce like antibody in cases of any foreign particle as an antigen is presented. Okay. In detail, we will discuss in our next or next to next class about like immune function of the blood and lymph. There we will thoroughly discuss about how like lymphatic cells, lymphocyte and T cells, B cells actually perform. But try to remember here that these are different lymphoid cells, mostly the lymphocyte, T cell, B cell, and then we have like macrophages, dendritic cells and natural killer cells. Macrophage directly engulf like all these bacteria, virus, and it can phagocyte, right, by having this destruction through the engulfing process and enzymatic degradation. Macrophage can kill all those foreign particles. Dendritic cells acts as like antigen presenting cell. So dendritic cell acts as antigen presenting cell, right. So whenever there is an antigen that comes contact to our body, this dendritic cell or the APC, which is the antigen presenting cell, it presents the antigen to our immune cells, mostly the B cells, and what happens like B cells start producing or secreting the antibody which eventually destroys those antigen. Okay. And finally the natural killer cells or the NK cells, they are also responsible to destroy various like different type of foreign particles or the toxins. Okay. Then what are different lymphoid organ present in our body? So lymph node, tonsils, thymus gland, spleen and bone marrow, these are the all important lymphoid organs that are present in the body. Lymph node has a smaller like glandular kind of like structure that is located in the lymph vessels. Lymph nodes are also called as lymph gland or lymphatic node. Okay. Then cervical lymph nodes drain and cleanse lymph from the head and neck area. So mostly like three different lymph node you can see. One is cervical lymph node, one is axillary lymph node, and then inguinal lymph node. cervical lymph nodes, mostly from like head and neck area, it cleans the or clear out the lymph. Then from the upper extremity of the body like shoulder and the breast area, axillary lymph node cleanses of all the fluid, and from the lower extremities or the external genital area, the inguinal lymph nodes mostly participates. Okay. Then this is the structure of lymph node. As you can see, this is also like a P-shaped structure, right? And how it looks, it almost looks like this kidney type. Kidney also have this type of like a P-shaped structure, and the size of it is like around 2.5 centimeter in length. This gets divided into like several compartment, right? So you can see like different compartment is present, and then B lymphocytes can be kind of developed from this overall like lymph node, and they can release the antibodies, and T lymphocytes can get generated, which generally basically like circulates, and T lymphocytes basically do like a surveillance type of activity. If there is formation of any abnormal cells like cancer cells, T cells kind of participates in the immune activity of our body, destroying those abnormal cells. Okay, so mostly this is the structure of lymph node. You can see, okay, we are not going in too much of details, but mostly like the cortex and medulla part is present, which is connected directly with the blood capillaries, also artery and vessels. So from the efferent part of this lymphatic vessel, so afferent part, right, and then the efferent part of the lymphatic vessels. So lymph will go from one side, and eventually the interstitial fluid will get exchanged and will pass to the blood. Okay. Then functions of lymph nodes: when lymph passes through the lymph node, it gets filtered, that is the water and the electrolytes are removed from it, and the proteins, lipids are retained in the lymph. Okay. And if the lymph, when it passes through the lymph node, if it carries any type of bacteria or other toxic substance or any abnormal cells, they get destroyed by the macrophage or other immune cells, mostly the macrophage. So they can phagocyte like the abnormal cells or the bacteria and immediately destroy it. So this is basically a kind of like a defense barrier of our body. So you can kind of consider that these are the posts, right, outpost of a castle, where if our enemies, we are putting like a surveillance activity to our enemy, and if any enemies try to cross those posts, we will attack them and destroy our enemies. Okay. So then next is tonsil, right. Tonsil is present in the like palatine tonsils is present in the opening near our oral cavities, pharyngeal tonsils, opening of the nasal cavity in the upper pharynx, and then linguinal tonsils, it is present in the back of the tongue. So as we see like our tonsils in the back of the tongue, those are lingual tonsils. Okay, and tonsils are kind of very important, because if we have any food that gets basically immediately in contact with the first defense like lymph organ, which is the tonsil. Okay, what are the functions of tonsils? Tonsils are the lymphoid organs that acts as a first line of defense. So as I said, like through our breathing or eating, if we are consuming any food and if it is carrying like any toxic substance or bacteria, it is immediately in contact with the first line of defense, which are the tonsil, and macrophage cells or other immune cells present in the tonsil will eventually try to eliminate those infections or the bacteria or any other foreign body. Okay. So tonsils are connected to the lymphatic network, allowing the immune cells and filtered debris to travel to nearby lymph node for further immune processing. They also help in draining excess fluid and all the other application what already we discussed, like retaining the water, retaining like the proteins, right, immune reaction. So everything same way tonsils also perform. Thymus gland is another very important like lymphoid organ, right? It is a primary lymphoid organ and it is responsible for the development and maturation, mainly the maturation of the T lymphocytes or the T cells, right, which is very essential for our adaptive immune system. It plays a very crucial role for maintaining our immune functions, especially in like the early life, right. So, maturation of T cells is a very important kind of action by the thymus, and thymus is located near to our like upper chest, just behind the sternum, you can see in front of our heart, and it is like the largest and most active during the childhood, and slowly with the adult age it gradually shrinks or kind of decrease in the size after the puberty. Okay, mostly before the adulthood the thymus activity is highly potent. Functions of thymus gland, you can see thymus is essential for the T cell maturation and the immune tolerance. It does not filter the lymph, but it produces and trains the T lymphocytes. It is highly active during the childhood, as we mentioned, right. So, unlike the lymph node, thymus does not filter the lymph, okay, but it produces the lymphocytes. So, this is very important to note that unlike other lymph node, thymus does not filter the lymph, okay. And then T cells, the mature T cells from the thymus, they enter the bloodstream and then they migrate to any other secondary lymphoid organ, okay. Spleen is the largest lymphoid organ in our body. It has very important role like in filtering the blood, recycling the RBC cells and support our immune system, okay. So, we have like this is like this is actually the largest lymphoid organ, and it is located in the upper left abdomen just behind the stomach, okay. It is composed of two different main tissues. One is like white pulp or lymphoid tissue. It is involved in the immune response, and then there is another type of tissue which is the red pulp. What it does? It basically filters the blood and it removes or destroys the old RBC and restores the platelet, okay. So, mostly the lymphoid function is done by the white pulp, okay, because the white pulp is only mostly involved in the immune response, and red pulp it has function to filter the blood and remove the old torn out RBC. So, what are different functions of spleen? As we discussed, spleen filters blood, removes old RBC, it supports immune function by activating B and T lymphocyte, right. White pulp participates in the immune function. It restores or stores the platelet and immune cells for rapid response. It is not directly of course connected to the lymphatic vessels, but it works with the lymphoid cells, okay. So, it does blood filtration along with immune surveillance in our body, right, and also it has a role in lymphocyte production and activation. So, these are different functions of spleen. Then finally, different limb related diseases, right. One of the very important and common limb related disease is the lymphoma or the cancer of the limb, right. So, cancer of the lymphatic system involving like the immune cells, which causes the swelling of the lymph organs or the lymph nodes in various areas, mostly in the neck, armpit or groin areas, which can cause like fever, weight loss, and slowly if the tumor cells get metastasized, you can experience like tumor spreading to your other organ, and this is a very aggressive form of like cancer, it cause very like rapid death, and survival rate is also very poor unless it is detected very early, okay. And there are two type of lymphoma mostly. One is Hodgkin lymphoma and another is the non-Hodgkin lymphoma. So, you can see like in addition to the presence or lack of Reed-Sternberg cells, other differentiation between non-Hodgkin lymphoma are includes. So, what is happened, like this Reed-Sternberg cells, they are distinctive giant cells that are found after the biopsy, So, in cases of this lymphoma, if the doctor collects some tissues during the biopsy and if they analyze the cell by like histology or any other molecular technique, they can observe a certain large big size of cells which are distinctive, which are called as Reed-Sternberg cells. They are only present in cases of Hodgkin lymphoma, okay, and these are derived from the B lymphocyte cells. So, if the Reed-Sternberg stained cells, which you can see here, this is the hallmark of the Hodgkin type of lymphoma, if these big cells are present, then this particular form of lymphoma is called as Hodgkin lymphoma. And if these Reed-Sternberg big cells are not present, then they are termed as non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Okay, non-Hodgkin lymphoma is incidentally is the more common form of lymphoma than the Hodgkin. Both type of cancers are rare, but with growing time, with like environmental pollution and other lifestyle related complications and also a lot of adulteration in the food and genetic mutation, we are experiencing like high rate of lymphoma condition. Okay, and also very important to note is like non-Hodgkin lymphoma may arise in the lymph node anywhere in the body. Okay, so anywhere in the part of your body non-Hodgkin lymphoma can generate, but Hodgkin lymphoma mostly generate in the upper part of the body. The Hodgkin lymphoma is also kind of moves in a more predictable way, so it is little bit less risky. Okay, so apart from lymphoma, other type of disease that can happen due to the blockage of lymph, like it can swell. So if the lymph flow can get obstructed due to many issues, the swelling of the gland can happen to the leg, to the hand, and the condition of elephantiasis, lymphedema, this type of enlarged lymph organ can cause this type of abnormality. These are rare, but this can happen. Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed the class about the lymph, about the lymphatic system. Now let's think about it. How does the lymph circulate in the body, and what role do lymph nodes play in the lymphatic system? What is edema, right? And what are lymphocytes and what is their role? So you can exercise these few questions. I hope you came to know lot about lymphatic system, and you can refer like different type of class notebooks like these textbooks. And thank you again for attending this another classes of human physiology. Let's meet with all of you in another next class. If you have any questions, we'll do live session. You can also drop the questions to the email. Thank you again for attending today's class. Thank you.